really changed that year, 2012. I was, and still am, good friends with Brandon Lyons, who's Williams spotter now, actually, in the Cup Series. He was my spotter in late models in 2010, 11, and in 12. And he called me up one day. He said, this is in, I don't know, it must have been about September, All-American 400 time. He's like, hey, can you go to Nashville this weekend? I remember I was sitting in my mom's dining room doing some high school classes online. I took my last 2 years of high school online. I'm like, yeah, sure. What's going on? Like, you want to go down? You want me to come to the race with you? He was spotting the All-American, right? He's like, well, I think I need you to shake down Kyle Busch's late model. I'm like, heck yeah, right? Like at that time, especially Kyle's car, his late models, that was the best of the best. Whole nother level above what we were doing. And so I hop in. My mom actually drove me. I was only 16. She drove me to meet him in Indiana. He picks me up. Brandon takes me to Nashville. I meet up with these guys. I never met any of these guys. Bond Suss, Chris Gabehart was the crew chief. Kyle was obviously driving. A bunch of other guys. So meet all these guys for the first time. The next day, practice comes. Kyle had to fly back and forth to Talladega. That's why they brought me in to shake it down. So they're like, all you need to do, go out, we're going to make a mock run. I'd never driven a Super at Nashville. I'd only driven a Super 4 times in my life. They're like, just go out and make a mock run, just don't wreck the car. All right, so I hop in this thing, and I'm in Kyle's seat, and I'm sitting there, driving through the pits. I go out, and I come back, I make my laps, and I'm like, oh, I felt pretty good, and everybody's laughing when I come back in. And they're like making fun of me, and like, what's the deal? And one of the guys I knew on the crew actually leans in. He's like, dude, you went faster than Kyle on his mock. And I'm like, what? It was small, a couple hundredths, right?
Yeah.
But they're all freaking out. So that weekend, though, was huge for me because it led into the Snowball that year. And I got to make a connection with Kyle, his group, and make, somewhat of an impression before the Snowball happened that season.
Did you actually meet Kyle then?
Yeah,
because you're shaking it down for him, which leads me to believe he's not there. But then at some point, did you guys?
Yeah, I stayed the whole weekend. So he came back, met him, talked to him for a minute, asked him as many questions as I could think of in 5 minutes talking to him, and then that was it.
That established a connection that you think got you back on the map.
It was, so I guess the story, it leads into the Snowball that year and me racing with him and being able to beat him at the Snowball. I don't think that would have meant nearly as much or anything at all without testing at Nashville that year and driving his car, right? Making an impression on him and having people report back to him like, hey, this kid's doing a good job, in your car while you're gone. And to be honest, I didn't know until after they had a list of people to drive that car that they were going through, like to shake it down. I wasn't even on the list. So they ran through like 3 people on this list. None of them could do it.
Oh, just from a schedule and logistics standpoint?
Some of them were racing that race. Some of them were doing other things, couldn't make it.
Got it.
So Chris Gabehart calls Brandon. They're pretty close. He's like, hey, who should we put in this car? He's like, put Erik in it. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, has he ever drove a Super at Nashville? And Brandon's like, oh, yeah. He's got lots of experience. Just let him drive. Yeah. So, yeah.
So you beat Kyle at the Snowball Derby, and then does that mean you get a call from Kyle and you're going to join his team? What's the deal?
It was weird. So we went down there, put kind of like the old band back together. I hadn't worked with Rich Lucius in about a year and a half. He came down to crew chief the race. My dad and I prepped the car up in Michigan, and one other guy towed it down, run the race, beat Kyle. After the race, shake hands. And I didn't really hear anything. So I was working with a guy out of Michigan named Alan Miller, who was an attorney who I had met in 2010, actually, through chance. And we called him, right? And we're like, we need to take advantage of this opportunity, right? This is probably the biggest things they're going to get for me ever at this level. And this is my chance to try to make something at the next level in NASCAR. I had no opportunities in NASCAR at this point. No calls from manufacturers, teams, nothing. And so I don't even know how this happened, but Alan is very close with Rick Hendrick. Gets on the phone with him, and he's like, yeah, Rick will meet with you guys. Okay. So we went down December 23rd. It was the day before Christmas Eve. Go and meet Mr. H in his office. And we're like, what do we do? And it wasn't even really a conversation of me ever going to drive for Rick. It was more like guidance.
Yeah.
Like what's out there? What do we need to do now? We have this conversation, and Rick's like, I think you really need to go drive for Kyle. Drive his trucks. And whether Rick had any conversation with Kyle or not, I have no idea. I know Kyle, as far as I know, was on the phone with Toyota TRD, like, hey, we need to do something with this kid, help him out, get in the truck series. After that conversation, December, January comes, we get talking to KBM, Rick Wren, all these guys, and that's when we really put that 5-race deal together in 2013.
If you like that conversation, you ought to listen to the entire download because the Dale Jr. download is available on all major podcast platforms.